They left me there, right in the middle of the bustling restaurant, with nothing but $50 in my pocket. The irony wasn't lost on me. The two people who should have had my back, the ones I thought would stand by me, abandoned me without a second thought. They just walked away, laughing as they left me to fend for myself. I'm Frank Walker, a 74-year-old Marine, a man who's faced far worse than what these two could ever throw at me. I served 3 tours in Vietnam, earned my Purple Hearts, and yet here I was, betrayed by my own son Jason and his wife, Samantha. They thought I wouldn't see through their scheme. They thought I was too broken to fight back, too worn down by the years, too fogged up by the nightmares of war. But they were wrong, dead wrong. They thought forging my signature on the deed to my house would be a simple task. They figured the old man with the PTSD would never notice, thought they could drag me through the mud, paint me as a crazy old fool, and everyone would believe it. They even filmed my bad days, trying to use my struggles against me. But there's one thing they didn't understand about me, about Marines. We don't back down. We don't give up. We fight, even when the odds are stacked against us. And I was about to show them the difference between being broken and being battle-tested. For 3 long years, I let them think they had won. I let them spend my money, plan my future in some overcrowded nursing home. And all the while, I documented every move they made, every lie, every theft, every cruel laugh. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's getting even. And I plan on doing just that, right in front of 800 people on Memorial Day. So buckle up, because this is a story of how I turned their greed into their undoing. One recorded conversation at a time. 3 years ago, after my wife, Emily, passed away from cancer, I moved in with Jason and Samantha in a suburban neighborhood outside of Charlotte. They promised me it was only temporary, just a few months while I got my footing again. It should have been a red flag right there. The house I owned, the one I'd worked my whole life for, was mine, paid for and free of debt, thanks to my military pension. But in my grief, I signed a few papers that gave Jason control over the bills. I trusted him. He was my only son. But soon, small things started to happen. Jason would roll his eyes whenever I took my medication. He'd mock me when I flinched at loud noises. "Here comes Pops with his meds again," he'd say with a laugh. Then, when things started to trigger my PTSD, when car alarms went off or the sound of doors slamming made me jump, they didn't get better. They got worse. "Here goes the crazy old man again," Jason would sneer, his voice dripping with disdain. Samantha, ever the concerned one, started recording my episodes on her phone. "It's for your own good," she'd say, as if documenting my trauma was going to help anything. But they didn't know I was paying attention. They thought they were getting away with it. But I was letting them make their moves. They'd talk about their plans, loud enough for me to hear. "Once we get the deed switched, we can refinance the house," Samantha would whisper. "Maybe put in that pool we've always wanted." They never thought I was listening, but I was. And every word they spoke went straight into my phone. It wasn't until a few months in that I started to see the full extent of their betrayal. They weren't just disrespecting me. They were stealing from me. Every time I asked where my money went, every time I asked what was going on with my house, they had an answer, but it didn't add up. Jason kept telling everyone that I couldn't manage my finances anymore. "Dad's getting confused," he'd say to the neighbors. "Memory is going, and his PTSD is making it worse." What they didn't realize was that I had been managing my finances for years before he was even born. And that's when the real shock hit. They were draining my bank account to fund their lavish lifestyle. Jason's new car, $700 a month. Samantha's shopping sprees, designer bags, expensive meals, all charged the account they claimed to manage for me. I didn't have the luxury of those things. I was driving a car that was more rust than metal, clipping coupons just to make it through the week, while they dined out on my dime. But I kept quiet. I wasn't weak, not by a long shot. I had a plan, a strategy. Jason thought my shaking hands were a sign of weakness. He thought my silence meant I was defeated. What he didn't understand was that this old Marine wasn't just playing defense. He was setting the stage for the ultimate counterattack. Every conversation, every lie, every cruel word, They all went straight into my phone's voice memo app, and I was documenting everything. The financial abuse, the mental games, the lies, all of it. But I let them think they had won, because the bigger they feel, the harder they fall. And Jason was about to find out just how hard a fall could be. By January 2024, I had a clear understanding of what was at stake. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, and everything I had left to lose. Jason thought he had the upper hand. He had been so sure of his victory, so confident that his plan would work. But he hadn't accounted for one thing. I had been preparing for this moment long, before he even knew what was going on. It wasn't just about the house, which was worth $285,000, thanks to the blood and sweat of my time in Vietnam. No, it was more than that. My pension with Lockheed Martin, accumulated over 25 years of service, had reached $1.3 million. Jason and Samantha thought I was living on Social Security and barely scraping by. They had no idea about that locked account I kept secret. If they could declare me incompetent, they would control it all, my house, my pension, and even my VA benefits. The $1,250 monthly disability check would go straight to them, while I would be locked away in some state-run nursing home, forgotten while they lived like royalty on my hard-earned money. But I wasn't about to let that happen. Jason had been planting seeds about my mental state, talking to neighbors and family, making sure everyone thought I was losing it. At the grocery store, he would stage concerned conversations, loud enough for others to hear. "Dad, you bought the milk yesterday, remember?" He'd say in front of strangers, as if I was too senile to notice. And at church, he'd put his arm around me like I was some frail old man, guiding me through the aisles. "Careful, Dad, watch your step," he'd say. His audience was always nearby, just enough for people to think I was losing control. But there was one thing Jason and Samantha didn't realize. I was building my case. Every document, every conversation, every interaction, I was taking notes. And then there was the law. I knew that property laws in North Carolina required 2 independent witnesses and notarization for any deed transfer over $50,000. The paperwork Jason had been preparing was sloppy. It had a notary stamp that looked fresh off a printer, and only one witness. Samantha. They didn't know it, but I had my old buddy, Jimmy Miller, who was a notary public, ready to back me up. He'd been through this before, and he knew what a forged document looked like from a mile away. The trap was set. And now, I just had to let Jason think he was winning. Because in war, it's always about making the other side think they've already won. The bigger they feel, the harder they fall. The day Jason decided to meet with a lawyer was the day I knew my window was closing. Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m. It was all set. This was their final move. But here's the thing about Marines. We don't fight the battle right away. No, we wait. We bide our time. We let the enemy think they've already won. It's not until the right moment that we strike. And let me tell you, Thursday afternoon was going to be my moment. For the next 48 hours, I didn't say a word. I didn't make a move. I watched Jason and Samantha talk, watched them believe they had me cornered. The meeting was set. The paperwork was ready. I was just waiting for them to make their play. They didn't realize that every step they took was taking them deeper into the trap I had laid for them. In the meantime, I kept gathering my evidence. Every conversation was stored on my recorder. Every document I needed was locked in my war chest, which I had carefully hidden under mattress. Emily had given me that box for our anniversary years ago. It had always been our little place for important things. But now it was more than that. It was a vault of revenge. Inside the box, I kept my Lockheed Martin pension statements. Years of contributions, compound interest, and a balance that would blow Jason's mind. I also kept the original deed to the house, the one that proved I own outright. There was no mortgage, no liens. Just me, my house, and my hard-earned peace of mind. And then there were the VA evaluations. Dr. Patricia Hayes had been my psychiatrist for over 15 years, and every report she had ever filed said the same thing. Mild anxiety, well managed with medication, and fully functional mentally. It was all there, black and white. But Jason, well, he didn't have any of that. He had his lies. But lies can't hold up against facts. The moment came on a cold, gray morning in February. It was 8 a.m., and Jason was already sitting across from me at the kitchen table, looking at me like I was some puzzle to be solved. He didn't know it yet, but I was ready to drop the hammer. "Dad, we need to talk," Jason said, his voice laced with fake concern. I sat down slowly, letting the moment settle. "About what?" I asked, leaning back in my chair, crossing my arms. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. "It's about your care," he said, his eyes shifting nervously. "We've been talking about it, and we think it's time to get some help." I couldn't help but laugh. Help? These people didn't want to help me. They wanted to control me, but I was too sharp to fall for their games now. "I don't need help," I said calmly, my gaze fixed on him. "I need you to stop stealing from me." Jason looked stunned, caught off guard by my calm response. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out the voice recorder. I pressed play. For the next 47 minutes, Jason and Samantha heard themselves, heard their lies, their schemes, and their betrayals. I had recorded every cruel word they had said about me. Every time they discussed my house and my money, like I wasn't even in the room. The digital clarity of the recordings was all the proof I needed. The silence in the room was deafening. Jason's face was white, his mouth working, but no words coming out. Samantha's hands were shaking. "This is what happens when you mess with the wrong Marine," I said quietly, my voice steady, calm. Jason didn't say a word after hearing the recordings. The air was thick with tension, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was scrambling now, trying to process what just happened. Samantha stood beside him, her face flushed red, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. But I wasn't about to let them control this moment. "Not anymore. This is where you've gone wrong, Jason," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You thought I didn't know what you were up to. You thought you could push me around because I'm old. You thought PTSD would be my weakness. But what you didn't realize is that Marines don't crumble that easily." Jason finally spoke, his voice low, filled with panic. "Dad, this isn't what you think. We were just trying to take care of you." But I knew it was a lie. His version of taking care of me was draining my life savings and trying to strip me of everything I worked for. "Take care of me? You've been taking care of yourselves. You've been lining your pockets with my money while planning to lock me away." My voice rose with every word, the anger I had kept buried for so long finally surfacing. Samantha's face turned pale. She tried to reach the phone in her pocket, but hesitated. She knew the game was up. The evidence was irrefutable. The truth was out. "This is elder abuse," I said, not even raising my voice. "Financial fraud. And you're both going to pay for it." Jason looked like he was about to say something, but his words faltered. He was realizing at that moment that his house of cards was crumbling. "Don't bother," I said. "This isn't something you can talk your way out of anymore. I've got everything I need. And now I'm taking it all back." Jason and Samantha stood there helpless as the reality of their betrayal hit them. There would be no more hiding, no more games. I had the documents, the recordings, and the support of people who knew the truth. The battle had only just begun. By the time Thursday rolled around, everything was in motion. I was ready. Jason thought he had already won. He thought I was just a frail, old man with no chance of fighting back. He thought he could take everything from me and walk away without facing any consequences. But Jason didn't understand Marines. We don't fight the same way the world does. While he and Samantha planned their little legal stunt, I was quietly preparing my counterstrike. I woke up early that morning, the cold winter light seeping through the curtains. I walked over to my old lockbox, hidden under the mattress, and pulled out the documents that would change everything. I had a stack of evidence that no lawyer in the world could ignore. The first document was my pension statement from Lockheed Martin. The numbers in it were a testament to years of hard work. Jason had no idea how much was there. If he had, he wouldn't have been so eager to force me into a corner. Next came the original deed to the house. It was all mine. No mortgage, no loans, just a house I had earned with my own blood. And then, of course, there were the VA evaluations. Dr. Patricia Hayes, my psychiatrist for over 15 years, had written multiple reports confirming my mental health. There was nothing in those records that said I was incapable of making decisions for myself. I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let my son steal my life away. With everything in hand, I called my old friend, Jimmy Miller. He was a retired colonel and the current commander of the VFW post. But more importantly, he was a man who knew the law. I needed him now. Are you ready for this? Jimmy asked when I called him. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied. I've got the evidence. Now it's time to put all into play. It was time. I could feel the weight of the day on my shoulders, but I wasn't nervous. Jason had made a critical mistake. He thought the meeting with the lawyer on Thursday would be his victory lap. What he didn't know was that I was about to flip the entire situation on him. Jimmy and I met early at the VFW post. The committee for the Memorial Day parade was gathering, and Jimmy had a special role to play in all this. He was about to become the key to my plan. Here's what we're going to do, Jimmy said. We're going to get you nominated as the Grand Marshal for the Memorial Day parade. The whole town will be watching. Jason and Samantha won't know what hit them. It was a bold move, but it was perfect. Jason would be furious, but he wouldn't be able to stop it. The VFW post, where I had been a proud member for over 40 years, had a tradition of selecting a local veteran to serve as the Grand Marshal. It wasn't just a title, it was a statement. It was a recognition of a lifetime of sacrifice. I wasn't about to let Jason and Samantha get away with their lies. So I let Jimmy handle the nomination. As the meeting went on, I watched the committee vote. There were no objections. They all knew my record. They knew what I had done, what I had sacrificed. The decision was made. I was going to be the Grand Marshal. The next few days were a blur of anticipation. Jason and Samantha had no idea what was coming. They were so focused on the family meeting that they didn't realize they had already lost. By the time the parade came around, they were going to see exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong man. The clock was ticking, and the final countdown had begun. I knew the day was coming when Jason would realize everything he had done was about to implode. That morning, as I prepared for the parade, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. From the moment Jason and Samantha thought they could manipulate me, to now, standing strong, ready to show the world the truth. Today wasn't just about the parade. It was about showing them that I was not the broken man they thought I was. I was a Marine, and this wasn't just some parade. This was my moment. I dressed in my full uniform, pressed and spotless, and put on the medals that I had earned in Vietnam. 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and a Combat Infantry badge. The weight of the medals was familiar. They had been a part of me for over 50 years, and now they would shine for all to see. Jason and Samantha thought they could make me disappear, but they were about to learn a hard lesson. The world was about to see who I really was. The day of the parade arrived, and I wasn't just going to wave from the back of a car. I was going to speak the truth, and I was going to do it in front of the whole town. The day of the parade arrived in full swing. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my uniform, making sure my medals hung just right. 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and my Combat Infantry badge. Each one of them had been earned through sacrifice, through battles fought in jungles far from home. Today, they weren't just pieces of metal. Today, they were the story of who I had always been. Jason had no idea what was coming. He thought he could parade me around like an old man, something to be proud of because he had taken care of me. But he didn't know what he was dealing with. Are you ready for this, Dad? Jason asked as he walked into the room, clearly unaware of the weight his words would carry in a few short hours. I didn't respond immediately. I simply gave him a smile, one that didn't reach my eyes. Yeah, I'm ready, son, but I think you should prepare yourself for something a little different. Jason didn't catch my meaning. He was too focused on getting me to the parade in his shiny new BMW. He kept coaching me on how to wave to the crowd, how to smile, how to look proud. But I wasn't going there to be his trophy. I was going to remind him and the entire town that I was far more than the broken old man he wanted everyone to believe. When we arrived at the parade staging area, the streets were alive with energy marching bands, scout troops, and families setting up along the sidewalks. But I only had eyes for one thing: the reviewing stand, where Jason and Samantha would be watching. This wasn't just a parade. It was a battle of truth versus lies, and I was finally stepping into the spotlight. As I sat in the lead convertible, I could hear the crowd growing louder. People were lining the streets, waving their flags, and calling out to the veterans as they passed by. I saw some familiar faces, and I knew they were all watching closely. But the one thing Jason didn't anticipate was the sheer power of this moment. I had let him think he was in control for so long. But now, the tables were turned. At the front of the parade route, Jimmy Miller walked beside me, his dress blues gleaming in the sun. His quiet confidence was a perfect counterpoint to the chaos that was about to unfold. He nodded to me, signaling that everything was in place. Jason was up ahead, standing at the reviewing stand with Samantha. He was so proud to show off his veteran father, the man he'd been pretending to take care of. He hadn't yet realized that today wasn't about him. It was about me, and he was about to find out exactly who he was messing with. The parade started, and the crowd cheered. We moved slowly, the convertible rolling past the spectators. I waved, but not with the fake, rehearsed motions Jason had practiced with me. My wave was steady, confident, because today, I wasn't just a veteran. Today, I was a man reclaiming everything they tried to take from me. When we reached the microphone, I could feel the weight of the crowd's gaze on me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment Jason and Samantha had been dreading. Jimmy stepped forward, his voice booming through the speakers, announcing my name. Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor a true American hero, a decorated Marine who served 3 tours in Vietnam. Frank Walker, 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and a Combat Infantry Badge. Frank, please take the mic. The crowd's applause was thunderous, but I wasn't there for the cheers. I was there to speak the truth. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the medals across my chest. The light from the sun reflected off the brass, casting a glow on the sea of faces watching me. Jason was standing off to the side, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked uneasy. He could feel something was about to happen, but he didn't know what. I took the microphone in my hand and paused for a moment, allowing the silence to settle. The crowd was waiting for me to speak. They had no idea what was coming. For 3 years, I began my voice steady. Some people have been trying to make you believe that I'm broken, that I'm confused, that I'm incapable of making my own decisions. They said I'm too old, too sick, too weak to handle my own life. Jason's face paled, his eyes darting around as if looking for a way to stop me. But it was too late. They've said I have episodes, that I get violent, that I don't even recognize my own family. They've even tried to convince you that I'm paranoid, accusing my own son of stealing from me. The crowd went quiet, the tension in the air palpable. I could see Jason shaking his head, his lips moving as if to speak, but no words came out. Samantha's phone was now recording, but she knew, just like he did, that it was too late. They were about to be exposed. I'm here to tell you the truth, I said, pulling out a manila envelope from inside my jacket. I opened it slowly, letting the crowd see the documents inside. These are the facts. Here is the Lockheed Martin pension that Jason didn't know existed. This is my original deed to the house. And this, I pulled out the voice recorder. This contains 47 minutes of recorded conversations where Jason and Samantha discussed my money, my house, and my life like I wasn't even here. The crowd gasped. Jason was frozen in place, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. Samantha, who had been filming everything, lowered her phone, her face pale and wide-eyed. This is what happens, I said, when you mess with someone who's fought for everything he has. The crowd's reaction was electric. Some people were in shock, others were outraged. Jason and Samantha stood at the reviewing stand, stunned, as they realized the truth had come to light in front of everyone. There was no denying it now. I continued speaking, my voice growing stronger. For 3 years, I've let them think they could take everything from me. They've stolen my money, my dignity, my peace of mind. But I'm taking it all back today. Jason made a move toward the stage, but he was stopped by Jimmy, who stepped forward, his face stern. "You're done, Jason," Jimmy said calmly, holding up a legal document. "This is a restraining order. You're prohibited from contacting Frank Walker or entering his property. Your actions have consequences." The crowd erupted into applause, and I could see Jason's face turning red with fury. But there was nothing he could do now. The damage was done, and everyone was watching. The world knew the truth. "I think it's time," I said, my voice calm but filled with authority, "to let go of all the lies." I handed the papers to Jason, watching as he fumbled to grasp them. The moment was irreversible. "Enjoy the consequences," I added. "You've earned them." The crowd was buzzing. The weight of what had just happened was settling in, and Jason and Samantha were standing there completely exposed. They had thought they were invincible, that their lies would be enough to turn everyone against me, but now it was all unraveling. I watched them from the stage, their faces flushed with humiliation as the crowd turned on them. Jason was pacing back and forth, his hands shaking, and I could see the realization dawning on him. This wasn't just about losing control of the house. This was about losing everything. His reputation, his career, his life as he knew it. He tried to regain some composure, but it was clear he was cracking under the pressure. "Dad, please," he called out, his voice strained with desperation. "This isn't what you think. We were just trying to help you." But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. They had seen the evidence, heard the recordings, and now they understood the true extent of betrayal. It wasn't about helping me. It was about stealing everything I had worked for. "I'm not having an episode, Jason," I said calmly, letting the words hang in the air. "This is what happens when you cross the wrong person." Samantha stood silently beside him, her face pale, her mouth working but no words coming out. She had been his accomplice in this scheme, and now there was no place for her to hide. She had played her part in filming my PTSD episodes, in manipulating the situation to her advantage. But now, with the truth out in the open, she was just as guilty as Jason. The crowd started murmuring, and I could see people in the front row reaching for their phones, recording every moment. This wasn't just a parade anymore. This was a reckoning. Jimmy Miller, who had been by my side the whole time, stepped forward, his voice steady and commanding. "This isn't just about family drama anymore. This is about elder abuse, financial fraud, and forgery. Frank Walker is not the broken man they've been trying to paint him as. He's a Marine, and Marines don't go down without a fight." His words rang through the air, cutting through the tension like a knife. The crowd erupted into applause, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The truth had finally come to light, and Jason and Samantha were standing there, exposed for who they truly were. It was a bittersweet victory, but a victory nonetheless. Jason's face was now a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You've destroyed our family," he said through clenched teeth, his voice rising with frustration. "This isn't the way it should have been." I took a step forward, standing tall, my medals gleaming in the sunlight. "You destroyed this family, Jason. Not me. You decided to steal from me, to lie to me, and to manipulate me for your own gain. You thought I wouldn't fight back, but you were wrong." His hands were trembling now, his face red with rage. "You don't know what you've done," he hissed. "I'll make you regret this." But there was no more time for threats. The battle was over. The truth had been revealed, and Jason had nothing left to hide behind. "I think it's time you learned something about Marines," I said, my voice low and controlled. "We don't back down. Not now, not ever. And the biggest mistake you made was underestimating me." With that, I turned my back on them, walking off the stage with my head held high. The crowd's applause continued to ring in my ears as I made my way to the waiting car. Behind me, I could hear Jason and Samantha arguing, but it didn't matter anymore. They were done. The game was over. As I climbed into the car, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt free. The house was mine. My pension was mine. And most importantly, my dignity was mine. I had fought for all of it, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me again. It didn't take long for the consequences to catch up with Jason and Samantha. Within hours of the parade, news of what had happened began to spread like wildfire. The truth about their betrayal the recordings, the forged documents. It was all over the town. By the time I got home, the phone was already ringing off the hook. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers were reaching out, offering their support and expressing their disbelief at what Jason and Samantha had done. It felt good to know that the community had my back, that people I had served with, worked with, and known for years believed in me. But as satisfying as it was to hear the support, I knew the real reckoning was just beginning. Jason and Samantha had thought they could play me, but now they were going to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong person. The next day, a sheriff's deputy showed up at my door. I had already expected this. He handed me a stack of papers, the official restraining order. It was now in full effect. Jason and Samantha were legally barred from entering my property or contacting me directly. The life they had tried to build on my back was officially over. The deputy also handed me a document from Wells Fargo. Apparently, they had discovered the unauthorized charges Jason had racked up on my account, over $47,000 in 3 years. The bank was reversing all the charges, freezing the account, and filing a fraud report with the FBI. It was almost too easy. Jason had been so careless, so confident that I wouldn't catch on, but he had underestimated me, and now he was paying the price for it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and paperwork. By the time the evening rolled around, the news had spread far and wide. People were talking. Jason's career was on the line. His insurance license was under review, and there was a very real possibility that he would be facing criminal charges. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt something else, relief. I had fought for my home, my pension, and my dignity. I had won, and now, with the legal battle still to come, I could finally move on with my life. By the time the dust settled, Jason and Samantha were fully aware of the consequences they were facing. Their life had come crashing down in a way neither of them had anticipated. Jason's insurance license was revoked within 48 hours of the fraud report being filed. His career, his pride, was gone. And the worst part? He had no one to blame but himself. The people he had deceived, the lies he had spun, were now being exposed for what they truly were. Samantha wasn't exempt either. The bank had launched an internal investigation, uncovering over $47,000 in unauthorized charges she had helped run up. The vacations, the designer clothes, the nights out at expensive restaurants, all on my dime. She had thought I would never notice. She thought she could live her life on my money without facing any repercussions. Now, the legal proceedings were underway. The charges of elder abuse, financial fraud, and forgery were hanging over their heads like a guillotine, ready to fall. And yet, despite everything, Jason still couldn't bring himself to acknowledge the gravity of his actions. "You're going to regret this, Dad," he'd said the night before, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and guilt. "I was just trying to take care of you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, staring at him. He still couldn't see it. Couldn't see how his betrayal had destroyed not just our family, but his own future as well. Regret? I finally said, my voice calm but firm. "The only thing I regret is trusting you. The only thing I regret is letting you think I was weak enough to not fight back." I walked away from him then, knowing that whatever came next, whether it was prison time, probation, or a ruined reputation, he had brought it upon himself. I didn't need to prove anything to him anymore. The truth was clear. He was the one who had crossed the line. It's funny how things work out. Life has a way of balancing the scales, even when it feels like the world has been tipped against you. After the dust had settled and the legal consequences had been handed down, I found a strange sense of peace. Jason and Samantha were living in a small apartment now, a far cry from the luxury they'd once flaunted. They had lost everything. The house, the car, the lifestyle. And the most painful loss for them wasn't financial. It was the loss of trust, the loss of family. They had burned bridges that could never be rebuilt. For me, the worst part was knowing how it had all come to this. How I had raised my son, worked my whole life for everything I had, only to have it all nearly stolen away by the very person I trusted the most. But I had also learned something powerful through it all. Never underestimate the strength of a Marine. And now, as I sat on my porch one morning, Sipping my coffee, the weight of those years of betrayal slowly lifted. I could hear the sound of children playing in the yard next door. The smell of freshly cut grass filled the air. The simple things I hadn't appreciated in a long time, were now enough to fill me with a sense of contentment. The truth had been revealed. Justice had been served. And now I had my life back. The phone rang that afternoon, and it was Tony Rodriguez, the neighbor who had become a close friend throughout this ordeal. "Hey, Frank," Tony said, his voice warm. "I just want to check in and make sure you're doing all right. You know, we're all still behind you. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." His words were genuine, and they reminded me of how far I had come. From a man who had been abandoned and manipulated by his own family, to someone who now had the respect and support of his community. "I'm good, Tony," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my chest. "I'm doing better than I've done in years." And that was the truth. Later that day, I went to the VFW post to meet with Jimmy Miller, the man who had been my rock throughout this whole ordeal. He handed me a piece of paper, something I wasn't expecting. "It's official," he said, smiling. "We're starting the Frank Walker Elder Advocacy Fund. We'll help other veterans who've been through what you've been through. You've got a lot of brothers who respect you, Frank. And now it's time to help the next generation of vets who need it." I felt a lump in my throat. All of this, the pain, the betrayal, the struggle, it was starting to make sense. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about using my experience to help others. It was about giving back to the veterans who had been through their own battles, just like I had. "I never thought I'd be in this position," I said, looking at the paper, "but I'm glad I am." As I sat back on my porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a sense of finality. I had fought for everything that mattered, my home, my dignity, and my family. But most importantly, I had fought for my peace of mind. Jason and Samantha were out of my life for good. The house was still mine. The money I had worked for was no longer being misused. And I could finally sleep at night, knowing that I had done the right thing, that I had stood my ground when it mattered. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't the money or the property. It was in reclaiming what was mine, my life and my respect. As I poured myself another cup of coffee, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tony's daughter, Emma. "Happy birthday, Grandpa Frank. We made you a cake." It made me smile. I was their hero, not the broken man I had been portrayed to be. I was a Marine, still standing, still fighting, and now finally at peace. I smiled and texted back, "I'll be there soon." And with that, I closed a chapter on that painful part of my life. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't to get angry, it's to get even. But most importantly, it's to live life on your terms with your dignity intact. And that's exactly what I was doing.